Welcome to Clever Orbits. This is one of your hosts, Louis Brandmeier. I'm here with Richard Futrell.
Hello.
And we're working really hard to make every opening frame by frame, like second by second, identical, so that you are not confused about which episode this is. Just kidding. And with us today to talk about the Defector Season 3, Episode 10 of The Next Generation, we have CEO and founder of Vegas Aces, Heather Ferris.
Hey, how you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good.
Yeah, it's not too hot over there in Las Vegas?
It's all good in the neighborhood.
So we met at Star Trek Las Vegas 2018, and I was really impressed that you were doing this amazing public service of recording and YouTube uploading the panels that people couldn't attend, either because they just weren't there or because they weren't able to go to all of them. And then we recorded some fun, like just hanging out, talking, exploring the conference videos, which was great.
Oh, I love those. They're so much fun.
And those are what? Heather Ferris, is that your YouTube channel where we can find these, or is there a special?
My YouTube channel is something that I don't remember at the moment. I think it's Cutesy. Just a second. Let me double check on this. This is how often I go to it.
Well, I mean, it's actually quite reasonable to assume that someone who's producing YouTube content would not be themselves watching said content. So.
No, what it is the Star Trek convention is like that one time a year where I could actually like have fun and enjoy myself, and like it's just like for me kind of a thing. I mean, I do it for other people definitely, but I am totally also doing it for myself because I absolutely love it, and it's just the most wonderful experience and wonderful feeling, and being around the people and just everything about it I just love so freaking much. So I don't remember where I was going with this, but I do have my YouTube channel. It is QT16, so QTSY16. That is it. And like I said, normally I'm not doing Star Trek. It's like once a year. It's my vacation. And then for the rest of the year, I'm working on Vegas Aces. So that's where I'm going to most of the time. I could totally tell you the channel of Vegas Aces. That I have memorized.
Let me guess. It's Vegas Aces.
Wait. It's the Vegas Aces.
Well, I was close. Very close. All I was missing was that one article. So speaking of we've got the Defecator. Oh wait, no, the Defector. Sorry, that was Richard's title for this episode.
I just got an image in my head
episode.
of a Romulan taking a shit.
They do kind of take a shit all over Jarek, don't they?
Yeah.
I think he pretty much takes the shit over himself.
And now it's time to talk about bathrooms and the Star Trek Enterprise.
Well, so that's a great place to start, actually. And listeners, don't worry, this will eventually become much more content-rich than it seems to be. Jarek's suite is like a really nice hotel room. I mean, like he's really pampered. I mean, for a traitor from a foreign government, that's really great. And no elegant segue here. This episode is fun and interesting. I thought the music was awesome, like just the best. It references the neutral zone in some of its aspects, and the Romulans being this sort of cunning, this representation of the cunning of humanity, this ability to obscure and deceive and play act in the interest of the acquisition and the maintenance of power and conquest. And so this is sort of our spycraft and our political intrigue and our innate capacity for like just one-upping our antagonists or our enemies externalized and put on display. And of course, luckily, we also have Picard, who is master of brinkmanship, put up against that and left to manage that very effectively. And, you know, I mean, the Romulans get added some subtlety here. So Richard and I, we've been doing all the Romulan episodes, and starting from the beginning, and actually we skipped over the enemy, Richard, so we're going to have to go back and do that one. Maybe we should edit this part out. But
behind the scenes.
Yeah, you know, maybe we should edit this part out as one of the very most common things that we actually say on this podcast that we then proceed not to edit out. So maybe it will be a staple of future podcasts. Who knows?
No, just call it a live stream. It's a live stream.
Yeah. We did this live on a recording, and then we played it back later. So yeah, I appreciated this episode. I mean, like, it was enjoyable. It was fun. Jarok's performance was great. The music was great. Picard's stuff was great. The last scene was awesome. There's a lot of little small things like what are those mysterious circuits on Picard's desk, or why is his teacup clearly a beaker with a handle on it?
It's a space teacup.
It's a space teacup. Okay, that's great. That's clearly the answer.
It's a speak up.
So back to the Romulan through line. We start with the Romulans having a certain measure of cunning and then depth, like with Mark Leonard's character in Balance of Terror. And, you know, he sort of questions the politics and the expansionist orientation of the Romulan Empire at the same time as being sort of an obedient commander of that Romulan warbird. And then we get an offhand reference in the Deadly Years. They're just kind of used as a generic villain in that episode. Then we get the Enterprise incident, where I contend that the Romulans are so embarrassed by the theft of this cloaking device that they actually spend basically 100 years, give or take a couple battles and whatnot, with the Federation, the Klingons, basically 100 years upping their game as much as possible in what they're already well suited towards and aimed at, which is cunning and deception and stratagem. And so by the time we meet them in the neutral zone, they're a little bit better. They're stronger. They're faster. And that enhanced cunning, if you will, is on strong display in this episode, where the entire plot is them sort of trying to convince the Federation that something is going on, which isn't, and them messing with this poor guy in order to prove or disprove his loyalty, which in the end they disprove his loyalty. And it speaks to a texture and a subtlety in the Romulan psyche that we might not get later on, like when they're kind of painted as more two-dimensional. Sadly, in DS9, at some point we'll go back through those to examine their growth and their development. But here it's just enough to give shades and notes of that original portrayal, where like not all Romulans are the same. Which in that aspect, it's even better than like the Klingons. It's better than the Borg. Better than the Founders and the Dominion, generally speaking, because, you know, not everybody is going to be the same in any culture other than our own. So it's not monolithic. And, you know, it really, if I had been listening for a moment of compassion, which is our classic distinction for each episode, in this one I would have seen and heard Admiral Jarok saying, "I'm here not to destroy the Romulan Empire, but to save it," and talking about looking into the face of his child and like things must change. Like that's really cool. I thought, you know, that's a classic Trekkian sentiment, and it's really interesting to have it come from the mouth of the other, and have us be the ones who are just kind of like, well, how do we know that we can trust them in espousing seemingly these compassionate, pacifist ideals that are really just known of by the Federation? So anyway, it's ultimately, I think, about this one guy and his experience of compassion and his moments of revelation in the face of expansionism on the part of the Romulan Empire and warmongering and wanting to make a difference in the face of that. And I think that's really cool because it does ultimately underscore the power of the individual to make a difference in the face of monolithic political forces and huge cultural pressures. So that's what I saw. Richard, how about you, man? And then we'll go to our guest.
Yeah, so there's two things to note here. First thing is that what really drives this episode is the really incredible acting from Jarek, who's played by, I've got it written here, someone jump in. Who played Jarek? Who was it? It's James.
Oh,
Heather. You did
James
research.
Sloan. James Sloan.
Yeah. So yeah, Sloan. So
Guy. Let's call him Guy.
I'll call him Jarek.
I don't know. Sloan's a pretty cool last name.
Yeah, it is.
Sloan.
Well, anyway, so his acting is. I actually thought at first that this was Andreas Katsoulis, because his acting is quite similar. What I really love about the acting, especially with Jarek Guy and Andreas Katsoulis, who comes in later as Commander Tomalak, and Jonathan Frakes as Riker, is they really sort of relish the situation they're in. You can tell that, when Jarek is cursing out Worf, he's really enjoying it. And when he's sparring even with Riker, he really enjoys it. Even Riker has a sort of twinkle in his eye when he's interrogating Jarek, and it indicates that, he's, relishing this moment. And, of course, that moment when Tomalak says, "You will surrender as prisoners of war." You can tell he's just like...
this joy of antagonistic multiculturalism.
Yeah. He's just so happy at that moment. He's really getting off in that moment. But so the acting really drives this, and also Jarek's acting is incredible when you just look at his face and how he changes from that feeling of relish to seriousness and somberness when he starts talking about important things like his daughter and the Romulan Empire. It's really quite a thing to see, and I think that's the thing that makes this episode sticky. And then on top of that incredible acting, you have a really rich story in terms of themes, and I think the main theme that I would want to highlight is it's about loyalty. What is loyalty? What are you loyal to? This whole thing turns out to be a test of Jarek's loyalty. And we also see two different structures of loyalty sort of displayed and contrasted with each other in the episode. We've got the Romulan structure, which is all about loyalty to authority. We're all about loyalty to some kind of hierarchy that tells you to do things. It's all about obedience. And then you've got the loyalty of the Federation, which is more about loyalty to ideals like peace, exploration, self-improvement, etc. And even in the very first scene when they're in the holodeck and they're acting out this bit of Shakespeare, and Picard is directing Data in acting out Shakespeare, what are the soldiers in that scene talking about? They're talking about loyalty to the king. The soldiers say, if the king's cause be wrong, our obedience to the king wipes out the crime of it out of us. So what they're saying is, we're about to go into a war. We're about to do immoral things, maybe kill some people, maybe kill some dudes. And they're thinking, but that's not going to be a crime because it's our obedience to the king which is motivating us. So we won't be blamed because we're being good, because we're being obedient.
Well, that's like divine right theory, isn't it? The divine command ethical theory.
If you think about loyalty as what is loyalty? Why do humans display loyalty? What is loyalty as a behavioral mechanism? Loyalty is this thing that enables these soldiers to do something which would be immoral, like kill someone, and then they can not feel upset about it because they know that the reason they did it is they're being loyal, and it's good to be loyal. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm not saying it's a good thing. It's just one of the ways that humans interact. And if the cause is good, it's a very good thing. And if the cause is bad, it's a very bad thing. And so then loyalty raises this question, which is the question that Picard has and grapples with deeply, which is, what is a good cause? What is a good cause to be loyal to? And at the beginning of the episode, it seems like he's kind of unsure, and he talks about, it'd be a black thing if the cause be unjust. And at the end, he knows it's good. He says, if the cause be just and true, then they are willing to die, referring to his crew. So how does he go from being unsure about the cause to being sure about the cause? What he's doing is he's evaluating Jarek as the person who's proposing this course of action of going into the neutral zone. And he's asking, is Jarek a moral guy? Jarek is kind of leading the neutral zone. Is Jarek a good leader? Is he someone we can trust? Is he someone we can give our loyalty to? And it turns out he is, but it turns out he also isn't, because he's being tricked. So that's a sort of ingenious move by the Romulans. But I think it's easy to look at this and think, so we've got the Romulans, the way the Romulans work, and they're loyal to their command structure. We've got the Enterprise and the Federation, and the way they work, and they're loyal to their ideals. And the Federation ideals are just better. Easy to look at this episode and say there's two kinds of loyalty here, and we've just learned that the Federation ideals are great and they triumph, and that's wonderful. I don't think that's it. I think there's actually something much more subtle here. And it plays out in the scene where Jarek is talking with Picard. The critical scene where the emotions are flying and Picard really forces the question on Jarek and basically forces him to give information about the alleged fleet at Nelvana 3 or 4 or whatever the number is.
3.
3. Good.
Yeah, it's 3.
Good.
Only the most important question of the episode.
So, like, in all of the things he does, Jarek never actually subscribes to Federation morality. He never says that we should be exploring the universe. He never says we should work on self-improvement. He never gives up any non-essential secrets. He blows up his ship. In the end, he kills himself. So in the end, he is still loyal to Romulus and the Romulan Empire in some sense. He doesn't want Romulus to join the Federation. It's just that, like you said, Lewis, he wants to save the Romulan Empire. He's not interested in saving the entire universe. He just wants to save the Romulan Empire. And what is that? Yeah?
Oh, I'm just realizing how utterly and exquisitely rare it is to hear you say my name when you're talking to me. It's very strange for me to hear you say my name.
Noted. Anyway, so Jarek, what does he stand for? What is it, and how is it that he's able to connect with Picard, even though he never actually aligns word for word with Picard's ideals? How are they able to connect to the point that Picard can judge that this guy's cause is just and true? How do they do that? Jarek tells this story about looking in the face of his daughter, and what he sees there is the future. What he sees there is future orientation, that we need to change things so that things will continue to work into the future, for future generations, for yourself going into the future. And he asks Picard, do you have children? Picard says no. And this sort of shows the difference between the Federation ideals and what Jarek's sort of more family-oriented ideals. So Picard has sacrificed everything for the Federation ideals. Doesn't have a family, Jarek says, then you've sacrificed too much. You can see there that they actually don't have the same moral structure, these two characters, but they can still converge because Picard recognizes that Jarek has this future orientation. It's all about making things work out in the long run, and that implies peace, and that implies cooperation. Like in the short term, you're always going to win by defecting and, being mean and being a jerk and taking things from everyone else, but that's not going to work out in the long run. And it's not going to work out in the long run, especially over generations and generations of children. So that's like the deeper loyalty that unites Jarek and Picard is this future orientation manifested through family. And so I think there's something much more interesting and subtle going here than this just being, Federation good, Romulans bad. Anyway, that's what I got.
That's one of the things, though, that's really awesome about this writer is there's no black and white. There's no good or bad.
Yeah. Yeah, it's quite rich.
Yeah, Ronald D. Moore did a really good job with this. And the cool thing about Moore is that he did a lot of scripts for DS9 and Voyager, and he's also the one that really, like, you could really see his work in DS9, especially how there's like no black and white, there's no good or bad. Everybody sort of like has their bad points and their good points, and the whole terrorism thing and everything with the Bajorans. And yeah, he's a really great writer.
Yeah, this episode's got it all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, So for my part, well, I want to let you have free reign, Heather. What else you got? What else did you see and appreciate?
Well, I think, first of all, just to talk about what Lewis said real quick, I wanted to say, I think Star Trek does a really, really good job showcasing like the culture and how individuals are different from that culture. The Frankies are a great example of that, you know, especially with Rom and Nog. So I wanted to talk about that. But yeah, basically what I saw with this episode, first off, Shakespeare. Oh, I used to be a big Shakespeare fan, but it's like now I'm not a big Shakespeare fan. So when I see Shakespeare, I'm just sort of like, ugh. I'm like, oh, great, more Shakespeare. I think I just overdid it when I was a teenager. Like, yeah. So that whole Shakespeare thing is always fun to see, especially with the next generation. But a lot of the reasons why they do that is because of Patrick Stewart, because he is a huge, huge, huge Shakespeare buff. Especially with him being an actor and everything in a lot of Shakespeare plays, he loves it. And I just wanted to point out that one of the fun things about this episode is that Patrick Stewart played a role as one of the holodeck characters of Michael Williams from Shakespeare's Henry V. And,
yeah, it's actually just really funny how much makeup they have to put on Patrick Stewart to take him from his natural form to have him look like Captain Picard. Because that was, I'm not sure if you guys were aware, but that's what Patrick Stewart looks like when he's left to himself. I'm just kidding. God bless you, Patrick Stewart.
But yeah, so, and this is also, speaking of Ronald Moore, this is also the second episode he wrote. It's the episode that earned him a position on the show's writing staff. So I don't know if people know that, but
as it well should have. Damn good. But yeah, please continue. Sorry.
No, it's cool. So so Lewis talked about like the episode itself, and then oh my God, I'm blanking on your name. I'm sorry.
Call him PhD.
Professor.
Call him generic PhD.
Professor. You know, like Xavier. Like Professor. Okay. Anyway.
I'll go with that.
Doctor.
Richard. Your students call you Richard, right?
Richard.
Depends on the student.
I'd like to hope they don't.
Well, Richard focused on the acting. And so what I want to do is I sort of want to focus on the script writing and Ronald Moore. And I did talk about it a little bit, especially how the way that he writes, it's like there's always different versions of the truth. There's no black and white. You'll always see like different conflicting emotions and intentions, and, you know, not everything is very clear cut. Everyone has their own story, and I think that makes things way more interesting. I really like that he brought out more of it, especially during DS9. Also, I also liked one of the things about this episode is, the focus on data and the ways humans interact and how sometimes, you know, they might be lying, they might not be lying, there might be like double crossing or different sides of the story, or, you know, and then you have data actually like asking questions about that. For example, that one section where he was like saying, oh, what does, you know, they're talking about my gut, what does my gut tell me, and feeling an intuition, or, you know, with their pants down, and he's trying to like figure all this stuff out with them. So yeah, I thought that was very, very interesting.
So I see you fall into the Dr. Pulaski camp on the pronunciation of of the android's name?
Which one?
The Pulaski camp. So there's this big, distinction in fandom between, I guess, those who call him Data and then those who call him Data.
Oh.
And Data was Dr. Pulaski's rambunctiously offensive. Not that it's intrinsically offensive, but it was her way of saying his name to have him pay attention to. So anyway, I just thought that was interesting.
Okay, cool. So yeah, that was my take on the episode.
I loved those scenes with. I fall in the Data camp, but I seeing him try to understand Geordi on intuition and talk about we'll catch the Romulans with their pants down. I thought that was delightful. Like there were just moments where I was openly laughing at the screen because it's quintessential, for his character to have moments like this.
Those are the ones I love the most too, especially when they're trying to, talk about human nature and how humans act and trying to figure it all out. And I love that one thing about the character. Now I don't want to say his name. Thank you.
No, I didn't want to do that. I mean, I don't think we have any canon authority to point to as far as his name pronunciation, but I'll certainly look for it after this conversation. I'm curious if there's any definitive. What's the call? Anyway, I thought him helping Jarek was sweet too. When he shows him Romulus on the holodeck. I thought that was a very generous, compassionate sort of thing to do, with the exception of the fact that Data, whatever, is not actually capable of feeling other people's feelings and not actually capable at this point of pity or I don't know. Richard, do we have a model for compassion such that somebody could engage in a compassionate act without feeling and empathizing with another person? Is it about
That's
results?
A deep question, man.
That's why I asked it. That's what we do here, man.
I mean that goes right into the hard problem of consciousness.
Oh, that's why it's a difficult question. So, for those of you who are curious, please go take a philosophy of mind class and come back. So I think we'll just gesture towards that question. The scene at the end, and this is skipping ahead a little bit, but the scene at the end where the Klingon warship decloak, I thought it was lovely. I thought it was aligned with the larger context of the show. I thought this made this episode a quintessentially Next Generation episode because, of course, in the original series, Klingons are bad guys, Romulans are bad guys, they're all against us, the Federation. In the Next Generation, Klingons are friends with us now, and they're roughly, generally on our side. And, Jamal Tiscapan talks about how there was a subtle reference to the Klingons earlier in the episode. I didn't catch that. So if any of you saw it, that's great. I want to hear about it. But otherwise, it didn't necessarily need to be mentioned in the episode for me to find it acceptable, given that we have this whole Klingon exchange program in the second or the third season, and we know that there are allies and they have cloaking devices. It was just a nice card to play, and it made for one of the best scenes in Star Trek, where Picard's just we're all going to die. You want that? You want that, bitch? Huh?
I would love to see Picard say bitch like that. Oh, yeah, we have that. Blunt Talk.
Anyway,
have you seen that? It's so fantastic.
He does? Oh, definitely.
Oh, yeah, Blunt Talk. He is on there, and it is so vulgar, and it is so hilarious. Oh, my God, I love it.
Of course it is, because it's him, and because no one would expect that.
It's totally great. But going back to Star Trek, so we don't get off topic.
Yeah, and going back especially to Richard, I wanted to make sure, because I definitely cut you off. And then Heather, I hear you.
Cool.
Yeah, so the Klingon appearance is quite ironic because Jarek says, looks at Worf and says it's exactly this kind of hot-headed behavior that's going to get us all killed. Presumably the Klingons joined in on this idea of going into the neutral zone because they were hoping for a fight. So it's actually what saved them.
That's actually a really good point. It's a really interesting point, given that their motivation produces the result of them being available in a certain way.
Loyalty.
Yeah, they're loyal. Check that out. I think Richard has an actual theme, a legitimate, not that you didn't before. I'm just noticing it. So what did you have? What were you holding back, Heather?
I was just going to say it's funny how the Klingons saved the day, because it seems that Ronald Moore, the writer of the script, he has a affinity or affection for the Klingons. And if you notice on basically a lot of the episodes that he writes, he basically develops the Klingons. He's the one that develops their character and their culture and the story behind them and everything about it. So I love the fact that he sort of brought them in to sort of save the day. You could tell that he really likes the Klingons. And then one other thing I want to talk about with the end is I really enjoyed the power play between Descartes and Tamalak. Am I pronouncing that right? I hope so.
Tamalak?
Tamalak. I always freaking butcher names. Okay. But I really love the power play between them and everything.
Yeah, that's classic Federation Romulan interaction. It's really delightful, actually. So, go ahead.
Did you guys know that the air date for this episode was January 1st, 1990?
The first 1990s episode, yeah.
Yep, so this is going to be 29 years old, and it still has relevant topics.
It's almost as old as I am. Luckily, I certainly still have relevance. Just like Varul. Wasn't that cursing interchange was awesome. I especially like where, and then you were talking about this, but the emphasis on actual curse words and Riker he really was excited to dust off his Romulan curse words that he apparently never gets a chance to use.
Like he'd been practicing that moment in the shower.
yeah, exactly. So speaking of being in the shower, this is actually not going to be a good segue. I thought the Romulan uniforms are really baggy. Like they're just unnecessarily large, and clearly Jarek's arms are not that big. What's that? Oh, it's all shoulder pads. So it's made entirely of shoulder pads.
It really is. It's like the worst 80s version of shoulder pads you can imagine.
Yeah,
well,
but
that's
there are
not
shoulder pads on your lower arm. Shoulder pads on your.
Dude, the shoulder pads went out and then they went down. It was just the whole thing was shoulder pads. They padded the whole thing.
Maybe it's a kind of so. And then I also didn't really understand either the color scheme, the style, the little boxes, the chain link thing that makes it look like a what is that word for yoga? Yoke? It looks like a yoke.
It fits the theme, but it's like a chain, though.
I'm so bad because I am not thinking that. I was thinking more like, what do you call it, BDSM or something?
Maybe that's endemic to Romulan culture. Maybe they're all just BDSM. Maybe that's why they're so obsessed with power plays and interchange. We now have a novel theory. This supposition
is like a dog collar.
Yeah. This supposition will haunt literally every episode about the Romulans that we ever do from now on. So thanks for adding that. That's pretty delightful.
Hey, that's what I do best.
So Romulus, I thought, incidentally, was beautiful. And then this interrogation room, I thought it was a little strange and unnerving, not only that it was so big, but that they have a room just for interrogation or maybe like interviews or something. We see that. Yeah, okay, and maybe they just call it interrogation. That's fine.
So how many lights are in there?
I don't know. There's at least 12. Great question, though. We'll ask Patrick Stewart later on when he comes back.
I just got it.
Yeah, we did that episode. So of course you need to do that. You need to get that. Well, we did that episode about a year ago, though.
Okay.
So I had a lot of like questions and a lot of small moments that I liked. One of my questions was like, why does Data have holographic human hands rather than android hands when he's got an android face in the Shakespeare play? Like when he's doing the Shakespeare play, you can see that his hands are clearly human-like hands. So I mean, maybe I don't know. I don't know. Maybe the technology isn't good enough to change his face, but it's good enough to change his hands, which change back the moment he leaves the holodeck. We know that holodecks can provide people with clothes that then get changed. So maybe that was the thing.
What I liked is that when Data was coming out of the play on the holodeck, he took his wig off, and presumably under that is another wig, not the actor. He took the wig off of his wig. I just wanted to point that out because it's cool.
Yeah, so that was clearly replicated or something. That was not holographic matter. I thought, so this was just a little, maybe a nitpick. Like, did anybody else see when the Romulan ship explodes outside the conference room, like the coordination of Picard's look, like the angle through the window that he was looking wasn't quite coordinated with the explosion itself. Like it looked like he was looking at the middle window, whereas the explosion was in the left window. And so I was just kind of like, well, I guess maybe.
Okay. I got 2 words for you: subspace interference.
We were talking about technobabble before this episode, and clearly that's going to help us with pretty much everything from now on. It's technobabble. So
I think that's the perfect answer for all questions.
Maybe.
That's right.
Maybe. Well, it's good enough. It's good enough. I'll accept that. And then I also liked the Romulan warbird when it's chasing the Romulan scout ship and it comes up to the Enterprise and Picard's basically talking to them like over the comm system and the Romulan ship just turns and leaves. I thought that was awesome. Like the boldness of that. And then also Tomalak like lying, brashly acting as if Picard can't touch or disprove his lie. And what I mean by that is like that satellite was not studying something on Nelvana 3 or whatever. It was clearly putting out those signals in order to possibly start a war. And so you get this slight smirk from Andreas Katsoulis as he's telling Picard because he knows, well, there's no way you can prove what you're asserting about this thing. And so it was just like, I really appreciated that. It was really cool.
It's like he's saying, it's like he's saying, this is just what we're going to say.
It's such a political thing. It's like we're going to say this
later. Archaeological research.
Yeah, exactly. And then let's see. There were a couple other things that I really appreciated. Then this is a real subtlety, right? This is one of those science things that we tend to pay attention to in Clever Orbits, is the lighting up of the nacelles when the ship goes to warp, right? So ostensibly it's an easy special effect for the producers to play in order to let the viewers know that the warp is going to warp drive. And what I thought, given my understanding of creation of warp bubbles, which is actually something that's been theorized in physics in the past decade or two, is that when it lights up, that means the warp bubble is actually being created. And so the intensification of power to the warp nacelles is what actually causes the warp bubble. Like there's some sort of subspace static or general subspace field, but the warp bubble is what actually moves the ship through space, like it's inhabiting some level of subspace, and so when that warp, I don't know, I need to know more about warp field theory. I think it's fascinating, and I think it's really interesting, and I'm almost coherent here, but I'm not quite, so someone somewhere I'm sure is.
Oh yeah, there's actually scientists out there that are trying to create a warp drive.
Yep.
It's awesome. Yeah, Google it. It's really cool. They haven't achieved it. They haven't achieved it, of course, but they're trying, which is awesome. I want them to try to make a replicator. I need a replicator in my life. I will pay money for a replicator.
I believe it's called the Alcubierre drive, after physicist Miguel Alcubierre, which it may look like I just Googled that, but I remembered Alcubierre from memory. So that's going to be what I say. Archaeological research. Any takers on why there are mysterious circuits on Picard's desk?
I got 2 words for you.
No, not again. You can't say subspace interference twice in one podcast.
All right, what do you got?
I mean, maybe they're the encrypted super top secret files? I don't know. I mean, he also has a giant crystal, which so there are crystals behind his seat, like there's this big rock. And what it made me realize is that probably, everybody gets wise in the 24th century to the fact that we are beings of energy who react to crystals, and crystals have a meaningful impact on consciousness. And so he ends up following along with that. And for anybody who's curious, you can go to shop.roddenberry.com and get a Picard desk crystal prop replica for $99.
Oh my God! Seriously?
Yes. Our mutual friend Stephen Gurton sent us this information mid-year last year, and was just so excited. He was like, "Dude, you know that one crystal that Picard occasionally picks up and does stuff with, that clearly has no purpose? Like you can buy it." It's just like, but wait, why would anyone want that? Are they doing a replica of his ready room?
I was going to say, okay, so is it a replica, or is it the actual one that he picked up? Like, is there only one of these, or are there like 10 of them on eBay?
It's not the actual one.
It'll be more than $90.
Yeah, well, I mean, this one's a replica. I mean, like, there's also some other replicas, like his desktop computer for $2,500, or the isolinear circuits. That's what those are. Why does he have isolinear circuits? It's a great question. It apparently appears in countless episodes of The Next Generation, according to this site that's trying to sell it. Comes with a certificate of authenticity. These are authentic isolinear crystals. I mean, like, actually,
well, before they introduced those certificates, there was a big underground black market for isolinear crystals. They had to shut it down.
So Richard, I'm actually going to send you the screenshots. You should put these with the video on YouTube, because there's clearly these shots of him just looking at the circuit, and it's like, what are you actually seeing? Nothing. You're seeing nothing. So, this clearly is not the most important part of this episode. Apparently, that's also our specialty here at Clever Orbits. I mean, I think I'm just about done with. We've touched on the subtlety of the Romulans, this Romulan commander, the theme of loyalty. We've noticed Varul and the music, and the last theme that I've got is this thing about artifice and play acting. Like the whole theme is about one-upmanship within political intrigue and deception and all this. And it's interesting that in order for, and it really, I think, telegraphs something about the episode and about human nature, that Data is learning how to deceive. That is what he's learning in order to be more human. And, the special form of deception known as acting is basically what he is learning. And so the fact that it gets shown by Tomalak, by Admiral Jarek, and that it's just something that's dealt with throughout the whole episode. I take the whole episode as this exploration of that part of human nature that can be disloyal, or that is questioning whether or not or how to be or what loyalty means, and whether or not to actually honor that. So anyway, what I realized when I was watching the TNG movies was if you go back and you watch each Data episode, it actually makes a comment on human nature and tells us more about what we are and what's interesting about the things that make us up. And so that's my concluding salvo. That's what I'm going to call that from now on. When I come up with something really great near the end of the podcast.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. So closing thoughts, y'all.
I thought this episode was decent.
It's a very Tyler thing to say.
Like maybe a little bit above average. No, it was great.
I was expecting more details from that.
I like how maybe.
Direct was.
Well, there's no point in unnecessary elaboration. This is one of the best TNG episodes. Top 3, maybe top 1.
Really?
Top 3. I'm going to commit to top 3.
Okay, well, that means we need to watch more episodes.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
I enjoyed it.
Well,
I liked it. One thing about this episode that I really loved was the writing, and I think also that's probably the reason why I like Deep Space Nine, and that's like my absolute favorite series. So I really resonated with this, and I really resonated with the story, and I loved the back and forth and how things were just not what they seemed, and there was always like more to the story than what we could, what we knew at the time.
It's always more with the Romulans.
Mm-hmm.
Always more with the Romulans.
They're tricky.
I give this a 9.5. I don't see anything wrong with it. It's good. It's fun. It's entertaining. I also am. I know that probably there could have been a better execution for it. I'm not sure exactly which part. Maybe there was stuff left on the floor, but I'm going to be conservative and go with a 9.5. Heather, what would you say?
9 out of 10, definitely.
And Richard, I think you hands down.
10 out of 10, man. I don't see any problems.
Awesome.
Well,
Perfect.
Okay, here's my only problem. How did they get such a great picture of Romulus for the holodeck?
Ooh, good question.
That's the only problem I have with this entire episode. Everything else is perfectly done.
They needed to have a spy down there taking pictures.
Yeah.
And then you have to ask, why are they getting the layout of the land?
They sent a Class 1 probe.
There you go.